Hi folks, Toad Hancock's here with Visordown.com, and today's weapon of choice is a big slice of retro cowl in the shape of Triumph's Thruxton R with added Café racer appendages. So, just before we go into the details, this is £12,000 there or thereabouts. This has got a few little extra bits of bling on it, including some cool Vance & Hines pipes, bar end mirrors, and a couple of other little trinkets like the indicators. 203 kilograms, we've got a 14.5 litre tank, which can get you a surprising distance on this, even if you ride it like a twat. And we've got an 810mm seat height. So, first off, into the engine. So this is a lump that's been around for a while. I first rode it in the Bobber Black 3-4 years ago when that was launched in South Portugal. And it is a 96 horsepower, about a bazillion torques. It's a really torquey motor. In fact, it's called the high torque engine. And it's obviously an 8-valve twin, parallel twin with a 270-degree firing order. So it's kind of like a cross-plane crank, sort of has the character of a Big Bang or a V-twin, although it is a parallel twin. And the engine is a really, really likeable unit. It's just a big chugger, really. It's surprisingly quick, and it can hurl you down the road with eye-watering efficiency, which it shouldn't when you look at it. And on paper, you look at the stats, you think it's not going to be very fast, but actually, it's pretty fucking quick. And it's got a really lovely character to it. It's helped loads by having these gorgeous little Vance & Hines exhaust pipes on it that just make it sound absolutely pucker. But other than that, it's got a really crisp ride-by-wire throttle. You've got a couple of riding modes to play with, 3 riding modes to play with if you like. And I tell you what, if Carlsberg did gearboxes, it would be the one fitted to this bike. The 6-speed box on this never gives you a false neutral. You can always fucking find neutral, which most manufacturers seem to forget is a decent thing to be able to do on a motorcycle. It gives you such a satisfying click when you engage the next gear, and you can shift without using your clutch all day long until your heart's content. It's just a fantastic gearbox in every sense of the word. Best ever. So we've got decent spec Showa BPF forks, or big piston forks, which are fully adjustable up front, and at the rear we've got some rather sexy looking Öhlins piggyback reservoir shock absorbers, which have got, they're kind of like a bespoke jobby for this bike. It says Triumph on them anyway, so either it's bespoke or they just went out and bought a sticker. So yeah, it's fully adjustable front and rear. This is on standard setup. This was on standard setup when I got it, and I found it a little bit too soft for my liking. So I've sort of tweaked, firmed up the front end, which is quite a common thing for me to do to get it to suit me. But yeah, it's good quality, and I really like the mix of the new suspension, the upside down front forks, anodized gold, with the kind of retro styling and the big old brake disc. I think it looks absolutely spot on. As I alluded to a moment ago, the suspension on it is good spec, but I don't seem to be able to get it set up right for myself. It could be a combination of the suspension, the weight, which is about 203 kilograms, and also the kind of geometry of the bike that makes it so. But if you hit any kind of bump mid-corner, it just really unsettles the bike, and it's a lively thing to ride. Don't think that this is the kind of bike that you can just chuck on its ear and it's going to hold a line through a corner, because it won't. It can understeer if you get on the throttle too early, and on the way into a corner you do feel the back end moving around quite a lot, as it does underpower on the way out of a corner before the traction control system will jump in and scoop you up. That said, it is fun to ride, it's enjoyable, and you need your wits about you, and it keeps you on your toes. But then again, it's a retro bike, and if it looks retro, it should ride retro, and it does. Perfectly retro. My uncle had a 1970s Norton Commando, and it kind of reminds me of that to ride. You've got to really think about it, whereas a modern bike, you can kind of turn half your brain off and just do it on autopilot, whereas with this, you've got to just keep an eye on everything you're doing and what's ahead of you to get the most out of it. So we've got probably 4 or 5 generation old Brembo calipers, big old 320mm discs up front, and there is a single Brembo caliper at the rear. The one thing that I can say about the braking system is that it is as retro as the looks. When you first pull the brake lever, it feels like you've got a twin leading shoe up front, because kind of nothing happens for the first centimetre, and then as you get into the actual pull of the lever, then it all starts to happen. And they do work, but you have to give them a really hefty pull. If I was going to buy one of these, the first thing that I would do is I would swap out the brake discs that are in there. They're probably similar sort of braking material as Weetabix, and then I would stick in some sintered pads from EBC or somebody like that. It is a Café racer. It is supposed to be the king of cool, not the coolest kid in the class, and for that reason you don't get a massive amount of tech up front. You can turn off the traction control individually, you can turn off the ABS individually. You've got 3 riding modes to play with, which are rain, road and sport, and sport is just slightly more aggressive throttle map, and I think probably lower levels of traction control than road. It is where you will find yourself most of the time because it's the most fun, and that's why we ride motorcycles, because they're fun. You've got a couple of trip computers, MPG, tank range to empty. I don't think you need a lot more than that. If you want a sat nav, get a strap one on or get a Bluetooth headset, in my opinion. I've always loved Triumph's detailing. When they get a retro bike, they make it look properly cool. You can't see any of the shitty little cables and wires and the wiring loom like you can on some retro bikes. I think the detailing and the packaging of it are absolutely spot on. I like the way it turns heads anywhere you go. It doesn't matter if you're riding out the Sainsbury's car park or if you're pulling up at a bike meet somewhere. This bike draws attention. It gets people talking, whether they like it or they love it. I've had old boys who ride old Triumphs from back in they've got 1940s and 1950s Triumphs, and they come over thinking that this is some kind of modern remake of an old bike, and I have to say, no, this is a brand new motorcycle that you can go out and buy today. And I just think that's great, and it's unashamedly Triumph, and they don't try and hide it. And yeah, it is exactly what it sets out to be. It is a cool looking retro bike. If you want to, you can go and have a play on a weekend. What don't we like about the bike? Not a huge great deal. It's fairly heavy for what it is. 203 kilograms. I'm pretty sure 40 to 50% of that is probably the lump of Hinkley iron down there. It's also very wristy to ride. Think mid-90s Ducati sports bike. After about half an hour, your wrists are properly hurting. And if you're going any more than 100 miles, you're going to need an hour or so just to sort of stretch out, because it is very wristy. But you know that when you walk into the dealership to put your deposit down on one, because it's got the clip-on bars and you've already sat on it, and it doesn't matter if you're riding 10 miles, 30 miles or sitting on a bike in a dealership, you can feel whether or not it's going to be comfortable for you, and you'll know that you'll be able to live with it. And to be honest with you, it's a very small price to pay to have a very cool looking bike sat in your garage. I mean, in terms of retro bikes out there, there's kind of a crop of, you've got like things like the XSR Yamaha, you've got Ducati Scramblers, Desert Sleds maybe. I just don't think any of them do the retro thing quite as well as Triumph, and I think that's probably because it's kind of Triumph's heritage. It's all they've got to sort of fall back on, that and speed records and Daytona and racing and stuff like that, but they're just good at making big Brit parallel twins look cool, and that's exactly what this is. £12,000, it's not a huge amount of money for a bike that looks this cool. You can imagine if this was rolling out with another British brand's name on the tank, it rhymes with Port and starts with N, it would cost probably £10,000 more. And if it came out of their factory, it would probably break down every 150 yards. And Triumphs are, this engine is a reliable old unit that you can depend on. Would I have one in my garage? Yeah, I would have one. And I've always liked this particular bike. The Thruxton R, I think, is a good mix of retro and performance. All you need to do are a couple of little changes and you've got a really, really good bike. Swap out the tyres for some slightly stickier Pirelli rubber and stick some sintered brake pads in it, and you've got a proper backlane scratcher that's not going to give you any trouble. You can read the full review on Visordown.com. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.